Thank you for coming. My name is Kathy Larrabee. I'm the Vice President of the League of Women Voters, Anne Arundel County. The League is very focused. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization focused on empowering voters. Tonight, as a public service, along with the American Association of University Women, we're sponsoring this Legislative Candidates Forum. Two important points about forums. One, you know, when you come to one, you become an informed voter. And number two, forums help to strengthen democracy. And they do this by bringing together in one room, in a common space, as we are tonight, voters with candidates for questions and answers. If you have want to ask a question, you do it with an index card written. You just raise your hand and someone will bring you a card and a pencil. They'll collect it from you and bring it to the front for the moderator. The League has very strict rules about how we conduct our forums. We're very grateful to the candidates for being here tonight, for jumping into that public arena and making democracy work even better. And we're grateful to the audience, you, for coming with diverse opinions, different points of view, and being respectful of one another. There are just a few housekeeping rules. The rules are on the back of the program. They're not housekeeping, sorry. They're actually forum rules. I'm not going to read them all because you can read them. Please silence your cell phones. There will be no use of cameras or recording devices except by the League's videographer in the back and myself. And if you'll kindly refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating your support for or against a candidate.
Until the end.
Until the end, yeah, until the end. And by the way, tonight's forum, if you hear something that you believe is important for people to know, tonight's forum is being video recorded, and it will be by Saturday. It will be on the League's website, League of Women Voters, Anne Arundel County. You can direct people there. So if you'll welcome me, join me in welcoming our moderator, Terrence Smith.
Thank you very much, everybody. I think it's admirable you're out here in the rain, and Hurricane Michael, I'm happy to say, is further south, and we're just getting the edge of it. Ed Riley was telling me that, 16 years ago, you said, we were doing, I guess I was the moderator of an environmental forum, and you managed to hit a deer on the way to an environmental forum.
You're not supposed to share that story.
Bambi. So, you know, all sorts of things can happen at these events. You can never tell. My purpose here is to try to give everybody the same amount of time, move it right along, get to as many of your questions as we can. This is still humming, I can hear. I don't know. I'll just put it over here a little bit. That's it.
That's it.
There it is. Okay. So it's a little painful, but we'll get it going. So let me not waste any time here. As you know, the questions will be on cards, and they'll be handed up to me, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. The candidates, each candidate be allowed 2 minutes to respond to a question. Please don't take it if you don't need it, because we have a crowd up here, and we'd like to move it along as best we can. And then there'll be closing statements, 2 minutes each, at the end. So with everybody's cooperation, we can make this work. Let me introduce, you have the bios of the candidates handed out to you, or at least available at the desk as you came in. So I invite you to read those and commit them all to memory. But I'll be very brief in just introducing from your left to the right. Eve Hurwitz is at the end. Wave your hand, Eve. Is the Democratic candidate for the state Senate from District 33, a former naval flight officer, currently a lieutenant commander in the Naval Reserve, and a businesswoman in Anne Arundel County. She is the Democratic candidate for the state Senate. Next to her, Senator Ed Riley, also known as Big Ed Riley, I think you can see why, is, of course, the Republican incumbent state senator for District 33. He ran the Riley Insurance Agency for more than 30 years and has been in the state Senate since 2009. For state delegate then, beginning with Heather Bagnall. Heather, wave your hand. First-time candidate, a Democrat, first-time candidate for office, but a long-time resident of Anne Arundel County. She is an arts educator, playwright, and arts administrator. Next to her should be, and is, Tracy Hovermail, a Democrat of Davidsonville, a businesswoman who's been active in South County civic organizations, and be very careful here. She was recently employed by Trace International, a company that monitors bribery, compliance, and ethics violations. So if anybody wants to leave now, go right ahead. Next to her, Pam Luby is a Democrat of Broadneck, an attorney, had a career as a business development manager for Fortune 500 companies, and has served on an exhaustive list of county civic organizations, all of which you can read about in your program. Next to her, coming, I guess, to your right and to the right, the Republican candidates, Michael Malone, Republican of Gambrills, appointed by Governor Larry Hogan, who incidentally, if you saw it, Governor Hogan was endorsed today by the Washington Post, which I think was pretty interesting and certainly different than four years ago. Michael Malone was appointed by Governor Hogan in 2005. He serves on the Judiciary Committee. Delegate Tony McConkey, right here, Republican of Severna Park, has served in the House of Delegates since 2002, currently ranking member on appropriations, and serves as the Republican leader on the budget. I guess since 2002, then you're the senior public official at the table. And last but not least, Delegate Sid Sabb is a Republican of Crownsville. He's a businessman. He's been in the General Assembly for 4 years and currently serves on the Health and Government Operations Committee. I've always wondered about that pairing, health and government operations, and what the connection is, but maybe you can explain that. Now, before we take your questions, the League has a question it wants to pose to the candidates about redistricting that I will read in just a moment, and they are doing that at all the candidate forums that they are holding in all 3 districts. And first, there's a little quiz. Do you know where the word gerrymandering comes from? Do you know the etymology of it? Well, I'll give you an answer. I'll tell you this, it was not invented in Maryland. It was in 1812, Governor Gerry of Massachusetts redesigned the state's districts to benefit his very bipartisanly named Democrat-Republican Party at the time. And one of the contorted districts he drew in the Boston area resembled a salamander, hence gerrymander. And it went into our language and is boy, is it with us today. So some 206 years later, we're still dealing with it here in Maryland. Some might argue more than other states. And hence the following question from the League of Women Voters. To you, all of you, and I guess we figured out we were going to start, who was going to start? Eve was going to start on that side. So the question is this. The Maryland Constitution requires that state legislative districts be compact, contiguous, and give due regard for natural boundaries and political subdivisions. Just remember those words, compact, contiguous. It contains, incidentally, no provisions or standards for the drawing of congressional districts. The congressional district maps adopted by the Maryland General Assembly following the 2010 census have been repeatedly challenged by state voters, and I might add have been the subject of a lot of political cartoons as well. As a member of the General Assembly that will oversee the next congressional redistricting cycle, what specific measures will you enact to address voters' objections and improve the redistricting process in Maryland? Eve, start us off. You know, in live television, there's an axiom that it's always the audience.
Why don't we do it the old-fashioned way?
Hi. I believe I can project to the back. Can everybody? Hello. There we go. Now I don't have to yell at you. Okay, first of all, thank you all for coming tonight. And thank you to the League of Women Voters and the AAUW for hosting us. So first of all, I want to say that gerrymandering, I believe, is inherently unfair, and we need to end this practice, first of all. Second of all, 61% of Americans are dissatisfied with the two-party system, something we're going to need to look at. One thing that we can do is actually something fairly new, and it's a way to use math to help us get out of this predicament. So the University of Chicago Law Review published a study, and afterwards, please feel free to ask me for the link or for some information, and I'll be happy to give it to you. And what they talk about is something called the efficiency gap, which is a way to measure partisan symmetry. In other words, there's actually a way to measure how unfair gerrymandering is and how to improve it. We can take the efficiency gap model, apply it to a computer-generated model, and actually come up with fair districts. So I want to take a hard look at this as a way to apply to our redistricting and have true, fair districts in our state. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Ed Riley.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to direct you to the back of your bulletin. Here is the problem with our federal redistricting, our congressional redistricting. And I, like many of you, followed the Supreme Court Wisconsin case and I was sorely disappointed that the Supreme Court justices did not correct this inequity. It would have been very simple, using the same standards we have at the state level and apply it to these federal issues. Now, I brought another prop down here at the bottom of the stage, is my district. And I have to share with you, Eve has been discriminated against in this map, and I and my Republican brethren have been benefited. If you look at the map, several districts in the Broadneck have been legislatively attached to Annapolis. It helps, the ones that are attached to Annapolis are predominantly Democrat voted precincts. It helps the Democratic candidates in Annapolis. The Republican configuration was given the surrounding precincts in Arnold and attached to District 33, where Eve and I live. These are predominantly Republican voting precincts. So what the Democratic leadership did was they packed Republican voters into my district, making it even harder for Eve to get elected, and that's not fair. We should change it with citizen representation, citizen people drawing the maps. I can see 10 people in this room who would do a great job of redrawing the maps. Earl Bradley, Amy Leahy, a bunch of people in here who would do a great job. Citizens redrawing the lines, not legislators picking voters. Thank you.
Okay, and Michael Malone will start for among the House candidates.
I'd like to go ahead and give a stab at trying to speak without a microphone. Bo, can you hear me? Good. Tori, can you hear me? Yeah. All right. Here, need a mic. Here, mic. Okay. Okay. First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting together this forum this evening. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. The issue of gerrymandering has been a passionate issue in my household for a long time. Outside, you will see some pamphlets that I've put forth. In 2002, Governor Glendening drew the districts here in Anne Arundel County to the point that if you were going to cover the whole district, you would have to drive over the Key Bridge for one of the districts, one of the legislative districts, or you'd have to go down to College Park. A lawsuit was filed, and that lawsuit was successful. Why? Because our current Maryland Constitution does say the districts must be drawn compact, continuous, and follow geographic and political boundaries. Now, the question is, what would I do if I'm fortunate enough to be in the House of Delegates in January? Well, what I would do is what I did this past session. I put forth a bill, House Bill 1022, which provided that the exact language which exists currently in our Constitution would apply to our congressional districts. In fact, the League of Women Voters came and testified on behalf of the bill. So did Common Cause. So did Fair Vote. So did several citizens from the district. It was simple legislation. Bipartisan legislation, 63 co-sponsors, Democrats and Republicans co-sponsoring the bill. Unfortunately, the Democrat leadership would not allow it out of committee. It and 13 other bills got a thumbs up, thumbs down vote with no discussion. So what needs to happen? Both parties need to address this issue seriously. That, or we need to have the courts come into play. I was at the court argument last week in Baltimore before the district court, and the three-judge panel there may very well tell us what to do if our representatives can't take care of it ourselves. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, you want to begin, and we'll just work down the line. That's fine.
Someone has to be first. Boy, did I used to hate it when my parents would say that to me. Because I knew when they said someone has to be first, they didn't mean someone, they meant me. Being first is not always fun. It's hard. And a lot of times when you are first, you are the first one forgotten. when something better comes along. But Maryland has always been a leader in so many ways. It's one of the things that makes me incredibly proud to be a Marylander, to have grown up here. We've been a leader in environmental concerns. We've been a leader in education, a leader in civil rights. We put marriage equality on the ballot. We put it to a vote. And the voters of Maryland decided that they wanted a more inclusive, equitable Maryland. And yet, we're afraid to put ourselves in front of the voters and let them decide. We have to fix our broken system, and we have to restore the faith in that system. And the only way to do that is with a nonpartisan commission that draws districts that are compact and that make sense. We have to fix our system, and we have to re-enfranchise those voters who feel like they have lost trust in us. And we have to trust that they will still put us in office, even when we do the right thing. We have to be the first. Somebody has to be the first. Then we can work with our governor to try and get our sister states to follow suit. But somebody has to be first.
Okay, thank you. Tracy, would you pick it up?
Well, I think we all agree that gerrymandering is wrong and it impacts people's confidence in their government. But redistricting is very complicated. The goal we talked about is that a compact, contiguous, considering natural boundaries and political subdivisions, and the district must contain a specific number of voters. We all want fair districts. But if we draw a compact, contiguous border around a city, surrounded on two sides by rivers, and the result is a district that consists of 80% Democrats and 20% Republicans, is that fair? Would the Republicans, those 20% of those voters, feel that they have a voice? I don't think they would. There's a lot of discussion about independent commissions. Who would select the members of the commissions? Elected officials? And have we lost independence with that? Or would it be a government employee, appointed or a tenured civil servant? Or someone else, Ed pointed out some people in the audience he feels would be able to do this. But what skills do we want those members of that commission to have? Certainly, we would want each to have a significant level of skill in a variety of areas. And how do we keep partisanship in check? My thoughts are that Maryland is home to some of the finest institutions of higher learning, and we should draw on their expertise to study the pitfalls and successes of redistricting schemes nationwide, and give the responsibility of drawing new lines based on their research and study to a coalition of these academic institutions. I truly trust in our young people's capabilities and commitment to justice.
Okay, Pam Luby, pick it up, please, and all of you, remember those two words in the Maryland Constitution. The district shall be compact, contiguous. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, Senator Riley, I would like to thank you for what you said. It is true, we have a really tough race ahead of us because of the map that you've seen there, and I appreciate you acknowledging that. I believe that as long as we have the state legislatures choosing who their voters are, it's not the voters choosing who their legislators are. So, Delegate Malone, if I do get elected and you do put that bill forth again next session, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Okay. Tony McConnell, please.
Thank you. The state language is wonderful, and it has teeth, as Delegate Malone said. It has been challenged in court, and we've won. One of the byproducts has been in Severna Park. One of the challenges in the 2002 lawsuit was that Severna Park was divided into like 3 pieces. And so one of the benefits of that lawsuit was that we unified Severna Park into one district, into District 33. I don't know what's wrong with my microphone. But one thing that's really made gerrymandering so extreme has been the advent of computers. The last 2 cycles, computers have allowed politicians to draw down to divide streets, neighborhoods, city blocks, and really design the districts to favor one party or the other. I do support state language being applied to the federal language, being applied to the federal districts, but also one thing that hasn't been mentioned, another way that gerrymandering hurts us locally is the multiple districts. The multiple districts allow incumbents greater protection by making 3 delegates run together instead of having single-member districts, which I would support. That greatly disadvantages challengers. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to thank the League for hosting us tonight, and I appreciate your advocacy. I have supported the Governor Hogan when he first got elected in 2015. He issued an executive order that would create a commission to do that. The problem with what we have now, we have 7-1. We have 7 Democrats, 1 Republican in the state. And it is not complicated like my friend over there said. It's not. Fairness is not complicated. It is embarrassing when you look at those maps and you see that the majority of Marylanders are not represented by the elected officials. And while I appreciate everyone's willingness to say that they support gerrymandering, but from my experience in Annapolis, when they get there, they will buckle just like the rest of them. They will not support. The bill that was passed in 2017 was a phony sham that the Democrats, all of them, supported by saying that we will do it when 5 other states surrounding us will do it. That is complete phony, and the leadership in Annapolis is the only way for them to control their power is to continue to have gerrymandering. So if you look at, even with Michael Malone's bill, only 13 Democrats co-sponsored it. Out of 91, only 13. And with all due respect, I worry that every Democrat that gets to Annapolis will support leadership and will follow. We, on the Republican side, we have always supported ending gerrymandering. We supported the governor when he put a bill. We will support when a Democrat do a bill. And I will continue to, I co-sponsored anyone, whether it's a Republican or Democrat, but most of the time, the bills that actually fair, that would actually work, will not come from the Democratic side.
Okay, let me ask each of you, there are a lot of good questions here, and so I will move as quickly as possible. This is sort of the broadest and question, which is, what will be the top 2 priorities that you would have as a state representative? How would those improve the lives of the District 33 voters?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that question. I do want to wrap up this redistricting real quick. Do you know Anne Arundel County has 4 congressional districts in it? Yeah. We have more congressmen in our county than 17 states. Think about that. My 2 priorities is, number 1, support Governor Hogan. He has done a great job. He has an even hand, a centrist attitude. He is making good decisions, and my number 1 priority is to make sure I help him run the state as well as possible. In fact, even though we have an advantage in this district, when we get to the body, there's 33 Democrats, 14 Republicans. 33 beats 14 every time, so I have very little influence on the floor. But I do have influence in the committee and influence with the governor, and we need to make sure that the state brings resources and their attention to us. Number 2 is the Bay Bridge issue. I put a bill in this year to try to address some inequities. We are pushing for another crossing on the Chesapeake Bay, and it's my opinion it shouldn't be through Arnold and Broadneck to Kent Island. It should be either north or south. But I'm willing to allow the engineers and the economists to decide what is the least environmental impact, the best cost, the most logical way to get people from the western shore to the eastern shore and back. Putting another bridge in a current location, in my personal opinion, is not a good idea. I'll be fighting to move it elsewhere so we can move some of that traffic elsewhere. Those are my 2 main issues. Thank you.
Okay, and Eve, pick it up and tell us what would be your two principal priorities and how you would try to forward them, and how they would benefit the people in this room?
Well, first off, we need to champion women's issues in our legislature. It took 9 years to get a bill passed that got rapist parental rights taken from them, 9 years, because we don't have women's lived experience and perspective in our General Assembly. We must have that to take care of women's issues. Honestly, all issues are women's issues, but we don't have a lot of people looking at it through the lens of women, which is what we need. So that's number one. Number two is families. We really need to look at what's happening to our mothers. 25% of American mothers go back to work less than 2 weeks after giving birth. People don't go back to work 2 weeks after major abdominal surgery, which is what most women are dealing with these days. Yet we're sending women back to work because they have to. In 90% of households, both people have to work. And in 40% of households, the women are the breadwinners. So we have to do something about this. The entire world has paid family leave except for Papua New Guinea, Suriname, and the United States. 4 states do have it now, and they're doing very well. All the businesses, and I'm a small business owner, I support this. All the businesses, thank you, all the businesses are reporting at a very least a neutral bottom line, but the preponderance of businesses are reporting improved bottom lines, improved retention, and much lower turnover. We need to do this for our workers, for our families, to get healthier families, because actually this is part of healthcare too. When you pull babies away from their primary caregiver because they're sending mothers back to work 10 days after giving birth, it causes trauma and long-term problems. Thank you.
Go ahead, Heather.
I talk a lot about changing the narrative, and it's funny because my 2 priority issues actually overlap quite a bit, because one of the things that I really want to do is find a way that people in Anne Arundel County can live where they work and work where they live. And part of how we do that is not only to raise wages and quality of life, but it's to reduce the cost of living. Now, one of the ways that I want to do that is what I call community infrastructure. It's the sidewalks, bike paths, green spaces we've been promised, but also public transportation, affordable housing, and childcare, bringing down the cost of childcare because it makes those individual wages worth more. And my other priority is education, which has a lot of overlap, because I want to change the narrative and make sure that we are addressing our students at every level. We know that we have a funding deficit, but we also need to be investing in universal pre-K, which again brings down those childcare costs. We want to be investing in early arts education, which gives those students a leg up. And in the middle school, we want to make sure we're investing in mental health professionals, because that is when our students are at their most vulnerable. At the high school level, we want to destigmatize and legitimize career and vocational training as an equal path to career success, equal to college. Thank you.
Tracy?
My 2 priorities, although I have a longer list than this, but the top 2. I believe it's really important that we take action now. I believe we're kind of behind the 8 ball on preserving and protecting our natural environment. I do believe the health of ourselves and our communities depend on the health of the environment and the well-being. I believe that we can have development and growth, and it can be responsible, and it doesn't have to come at the cost of the environment. I will support green energy, the Green Energy Jobs Act. I myself am a user of solar energy. We have solar panels on our roof, and we have a geothermal HVAC system. And we have a couple of months out of the year that we do not have an electric bill in our all-electric home. So it works, and I know it works, and I like to see it on public buildings, schools, wherever we can. I'd like to see incentives for businesses to use the renewable resources. I really believe we need to transition away from fossil fuels, particularly in this county, given we have 500 miles of shoreline and rising sea levels will be a problem for us in the future. The other issue that I'm very concerned about is quality health care and maintaining it in this unstable environment. Part of why I jumped in, 2 reasons. One, a close friend of mine who had a son, my son's age, her son, a dentist working, he became very sick, had cancer, lost his health insurance when his contract ran out with the hospital he was working at. She was almost faced with selling her farm so that she could pay for her son. not knowing where she would go after that. Well, her son is not here now. But that's part of what made me realize that we have to step up to this. We have to ensure that all people have access to health care and decent prices on prescription drugs.
Okay, Pam Luby, please.
Okay, surprise, surprise, the two issues that are most important to me are the two areas that I work in. First of all, it's the opioid epidemic. I manage a coalition to prevent substance abuse up in the northern part of the county, but the opioid epidemic is everywhere. Just last week, I was sitting at a prevention meeting where we strategized what we were going to do about the problem, and to the left of me was a woman who had lost her second son, a twin boy of the first, to an overdose. And to the right of me was a woman whose daughter had been in a coma for the past 2 weeks because of an overdose. So this is something that is affecting everybody. And yes, it's something that happens here in Severna Park as well. I have a map that I usually carry with me that shows where all of the overdoses occur. But I have some pretty good ideas for solutions. It's about long-term affordable care. It's about building communities of recovery. It's about holding pharmaceuticals accountable. It's about using drugs such as Vivitrol and Suboxone and medical marijuana to help people get off their addiction. And I think I have a lot to contribute to that. Secondly is preparing our aging population, preparing Maryland for our aging population. I worked in the area of adult guardianship for the Maryland courts, and I ran a visitor program that visited people under adult guardianship, and I was struck by the lack of services for both the caregivers and the people under guardianship, and I was appalled at some of the nursing home conditions that I faced. People are living longer. By the year 2030, 25% of adults will be over the age of 65. We need to be starting to build age-friendly communities offering services because people want to live in their homes. They're not going to Florida anymore. They want to stay with their families, and we need to, protect the people that have contributed so much to our society and of which one day we will be a part of. Thank you.
I know that we will get back to some of these issues, and I hope when we do, we can speak specifically to what the legislature can do about them, since that's what we're talking about here. Go ahead, Michael Malone.
Well, one of the most important issue that I think we need to address this upcoming session, we've already started talking about, and it is ending the political gerrymandering. As a skeptic, Ms. Marino there in the front, as a fellow attorney, she didn't like the fact I recognized her, may think that I'm a Johnny-come-lately. Well, I ask everyone to please check on the table that's out there, and you will see a picture of me when I was a little thinner in 2002 in front of the Maryland Court of Appeals challenging the redistricting maps that were put in place in 2002. Why is this issue the most important? Because it affects all the issues we're going to be talking about. It affects the opioid crisis issue. It affects the healthcare issues we're going to be addressing. It affects the education issues we're going to be addressing. Because currently with the gerrymandered districts, we have a hyper-partisan system that is in place. And to get elected now, you pretty much have to either run further right or further left. Which means when we start out with trying to come up with the good ideas, you start out here and here, rather than here and here. There was a time on the national level Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill would find a way to work together and get things done. But unfortunately, this hyper-partisanship is making it very difficult. Intellectual honesty is going out the window, and good policies just aren't coming forth. That is why ending the gerrymandering, especially considering the fact that we have the 2020 census coming up, will be the most important issue this upcoming 4 years of session. Secondly, next issue that I think is important to address, affecting our everyday lives, is the traffic issues here in Anne Arundel County and throughout the state. Senator Riley and I co-sponsored a bill which would give Anne Arundel County greater say on where the next Bay Bridge span would go, rather having as much control by Eastern Shore counties. So those are things we need to look at. We got to find a way that we can simply get to work, get to school in a better fashion and not face the traffic we're currently facing.
Okay, Tony McConkey, please.
Roads have. Nobody else has a problem. Nobody else? Oh, there. Okay. Pointed in my mouth.
There we go.
No, but roads have me most excited for the next 4 years. There's an idea that the governor has put forward, which has gone to out for bid, which I think could transform the state, and that is to build 100 new highway miles on the main arteries, on 295, on the D.C. Beltway, on 270, that would greater connect D.C. and Baltimore metropolitan areas. And the governor's plan is to do this without any taxpayer expense, 100 new highway miles. Would be paid for by third parties and then repaid by tolls on those roads. But those roads would free the other roads significantly, and by bringing Baltimore and D.C. together, the synergy that we could have in this state, the economic boom that we could have, the unemployment in Baltimore matched with the jobs in D.C., the affordable housing in Baltimore matched with the high prices in D.C. I think bringing that together could be really a big boon for Maryland and wouldn't cost taxpayers a dollar. Roads, I think, that road plan, I think, would do more than any other plan before us to transform the state. The second idea that I also think would be a tremendous boon would be to eliminate retirement taxes on retirement income. If we could keep our most active seniors here in Maryland instead of having them go elsewhere to retire because of the high taxes, keeping them here, volunteering, active in the community, keeping their money active in the community, I think would have a tremendous benefit to the state of Maryland and would help our families and our charities and our community organizations. Those two ideas. The governor has said that is his goal, to eliminate taxes on retirement income. We've chipped away at it. We've reduced the taxes on military, the first 15,000 in military, some first responders. I hope we can expand it to everybody.
Just to explain, that would mean pensions and IRAs, is that what you're talking about?
Retirement income, yes, pensions and IRAs. And this year, we're looking at a $1 billion surplus, which would pay for that expense. Thank you.
Sid Saab.
Thank you. I'm not a single or a double issue candidate, so it's a little bit difficult to narrow down to just two. I think for someone that believes in term limits and for someone that know that we have such a short period of time that we going to be in public office, I believe the economy and tax is one of my top priorities. If we don't have the economy growing and moving, we're not going to have those retirees staying here as they've been fleeing the state as they have in the past. And I think one thing that's been always neglected, that we have failed, our health care and mental issues that some of the younger people that has not been addressed, and I think it's affecting our society. The opioid abuse is a huge thing that I've worked on and I will continue to work on. And we also need to make sure that we continue to work on drug prices and insurance rates. Those are the big things that I think we can all agree that are really hurting people and driving them out of the state. Thank you.
Okay. What we're going to do here is we have many of your questions, and I'll simply start and arbitrarily start. Okay, I have no objection to that. We're going to rotate, and for example, in this case, begin with Tracy, I think. Let's do it that way, and then the purpose is just to give everybody equal time, and it doesn't really matter how you work it out. We have Gail doing this. She has a PhD. Are you really going to argue with her? And come on. So the first question here, Tracy, you begin. How will you work to stop the slide in education quality we are experiencing in our state and county schools?
Wow, that's a big one, and that's a very important one because we've slid from number 1 ranked nationally to number 6. I know that
in what period of time?
On the past 3 years, I believe. 3 years, 2-3 years. We need to stop the slide, and it's going to be really important because the legislature this year is going to be looking at the results of the Kirwan Commission and making decisions on where to invest. I believe that we know in Anne Arundel County that our teachers have not received the step increases that they deserve. So we have a lot of our good teachers moving out of the county. So we're training people here, we're paying to train, and then we're seeing them go elsewhere. So we need to ensure that the teacher pay comes up to grade. In this county specifically, relative to other counties, we need to invest in early childhood education. I think we need to invest more in community schools, those schools that can provide services to the children beyond what a traditional school may provide, in the areas that they need the extra services, mental health services, food services. The extra services, the ones that aren't as privileged as we are in this room. So I would like to see the Kirwan Commission. We really need to push forward many of the recommendations that are in that.
Okay, Pam, pick it up, and any specifics you can add to those
Sure.
points
First of
would
all,
help.
I agree with everything that Tracy said. Secondly, I was very concerned about the schools, and I didn't really understand what the problem was, so I got myself on the substitute teacher roster, and I taught at as many different schools as I could. I went to Mary Moss Academy, I went to Severna Park, and I can tell you, yeah, the quality of the education is going down. The classes are just way too big. There's no way that the teachers can give the individual attention that they need to the students, and it's just not a good learning environment when you have those oversized classrooms and underpaid teachers. Secondly, I have been endorsed by the Teachers Association. And just as a final note, I think part of the problem is the outlook. We see, or some people see, funding education as a tax burden rather than an investment. And we just need to kind of change how we look at it. And you know, we have an opportunity with this fall, putting casino money back into the schools, but we do need to do more, and I would work across party lines to make that happen. Thank you.
As someone who is educated here in Anne Arundel County and also served as a substitute teacher, in fact, right here at Severna Park Middle School at one time, I certainly recognize the importance of education. All 4 of my children have attended public schools here in Anne Arundel County. But I think we need to focus on the classroom, make sure the money that is being spent, and Governor Hogan has increased the education budget every year that he was in office, goes more towards the classrooms and less towards administration and those type of challenges. We also need to be focusing on vocational training to make sure that we have people who are actually finishing high school and being able to actually go and get a job, because not going to college is not necessarily the answer for everyone. And we need to make sure we are also focusing on those vocational training, both here in Anne Arundel County and throughout the state.
I'm just happy to say that my son's teacher's here today, and I'm glad to see Ms. Sawinski's here. Thank you for coming out, and I very much support teachers, but I'd like to say that I think we've proven that more money doesn't necessarily help education. When I was first elected in 2002, we just passed Thornton, which added billions of state dollars. Billions of state, what am I doing? Billions of state dollars to education, and we have very little show for it in the form of test improvements. Everything is about the same. We haven't made much progress at all in Anne Arundel or statewide. We're unhappy with the state assessments, which didn't show any growth, and so we switched to Park, and we tried Park for a little while, and then that didn't do anything. In fact, I think we went down in some categories, and so now we've canceled that. So now we don't have any objective assessment. But I truly support the classroom, and if we could move more money to the classroom, that would be the solution, I believe. But here in Anne Arundel County, it seems like we have so many levels of bureaucracy, so many levels of administrators. I was at a graduation, and I was sitting with up on the platform with the teachers, with the superintendent, and it was amazing to me how many levels there are above the principal. I thought it was the principal and the superintendent, but it's the principal, and then this layer, and that layer, and this layer, this assistant, that assistant. We have too much overhead, and that should be more focused on the classroom and the teacher in the classroom. And so I think more money's not the answer, but a better a better focus on best practices and on strengthening the classroom. One last thing, there was a study done which showed that Anne Arundel County, across the country, 3,000 school districts, Anne Arundel County is in the top 10, not the top 10%, but the top 10 in administrative costs, which supports my theory that we're spending too much on overhead. But thank you.
Okay, and finally, Sid Seven.
Thank you. As a father that has three children in three different schools, elementary school, middle school, and high school, like my colleague here said, money is not the answer to education. As someone that was educated overseas, I think we lag behind many other countries, including third world countries. I graduated overseas. I came here and I went to college, and all of a sudden I was getting 4.0 GPA. My mom thought I became a genius, and she's like, God bless America. My son just came here and I'm like, no, Mom, we already studied that the last 2 years. That's embarrassing. I do believe that we need to spend more money in the classroom than on Riva Road, and I've had multiple conversations with the superintendent, and I've told him that I see a lot of cars in the parking lot. Do we need all those people working there? And he tells me, although the study shows otherwise, that he runs on a skeleton crew. But I still believe that we need to I proposed an amendment last year on the House floor that would give teachers $1,000 for the tax every year for professional development. And unfortunately, although I wasn't endorsed by the teachers union, this was one of the big things, and the people that actually voted against it were the majority of the Democratic Party. So, we'll continue to try to push to help teachers. I love teachers. God bless them. I couldn't do what they do. I know teachers do it because they're good people and not for the money, but we need to support them, and we need to give them the support at home also, not just with with money, but also by telling our children, raising our children correctly so they can respect teachers and understand that the teachers are there for their best interest and not theirs. Thank you.
Heather Bagnall, we've not forgotten you.
Two minutes, eh? I am, as I mentioned, I'm an arts educator, and I actually taught in the PVA program here in Anne Arundel County, which is the Performing and Visual Arts program. It's an after-school program, but it is part of the curriculum and is graded. And I had the luxury of teaching theater arts to middle schoolers at Bates Middle School and at Brooklyn Park Middle School. And I created a curriculum called Cultivating Kindness Through Theater Arts, which uses theater games to teach empathy, team building, and communication skills, all of which are incredibly transferable skills. So I have seen firsthand the transformative power of the arts, especially for non-classroom learners. So a big platform of mine is making sure that we've got arts integration at every level of education, starting in early arts education. I also think that we need to close the accessibility gap with universal pre-K, and by destigmatizing poverty. We have a high level of poverty in our schools throughout Maryland, and we have a high level of food instability. And a free lunch program destigmatizes that poverty. Children shouldn't feel like they've committed a crime just for the crime of being poor. We also have a major problem in Anne Arundel County with recruitment and retention of teachers, because they can go to our sister counties and immediately make more money, or they can come from another county and be at a higher step level. So I want to work with the county across lines. I also am a huge proponent of community schools and using pre-K to reduce childcare costs. There's a lot that I want to do. One of the other things I wanted to mention, and this is sort of jumping on to what Sid said, we need a student mentor program so that those students have an adult that follows them through elementary school, then a new adult that follows them through middle school, and another one that follows them through high school, so they have someone that they can go to when they have an issue.
Okay, thank you, Heather. If your program teaches civility and cooperation, I would recommend that you conduct one in Washington, D.C. and see what happens. Eve, go ahead. We'll hear from the Senate candidates.
So as far as money not being the answer, I would say see what the teachers who lost 6 steps say about that and are making $20,000 less than the surrounding counties. One way to fix this is by voting yes on question 1, which will be on your ballot on November 6th. Question 1 will get the promised casino money to schools the way it was really promised, because that hasn't been happening the way it was supposed to. So vote yes on question 1. That will immediately inject money into our schools that we need to make a lot of improvements. Second, in order to make schools better, you need to make people want to be there. That means teachers, administrators, children. 2 ways to do that. First of all, with the teachers, not just the money with the restoring the steps, but also making them feel like they're valued. Doing morale events, actually figuring out a way to make teachers say, we know your job is hard and we care about you and we're going to make it easier for you to be here. For kids, we got to stop taking away recess, taking away music. We're taking away the things that make kids kids. They learn most when they're actually playing. They learn more when they're playing on the playground than they do in classrooms. It's proven scientifically. So we have to stop pulling out music programs and we have to let our kids be kids and grow the way they need to and foster that sense of community, connection, and arts.
Ed Riley.
Thank you. So I know we have some teachers in the room. Thank you very much. I have to share with you, I am so distressed that our teachers have become truant officers, social workers, marriage counselors. Every time a problem occurs at the house and in the community, the child brings those experiences to school, and the teacher and the classmates have to face that. It is an unusually difficult task in this environment. So as we talk about the opioid problem, as we talk about affordable housing, those things, if we can address them properly, will help. But 2 specific issues is, number 1, we've taken, in my opinion, one of the most important steps of electing a school board. We have several people in the audience who are running for school board. Get to know them, get to know their attitude. We need to hold these school board members accountable for our dollars and the treasure of our staff, our teachers, our administrators, our special education teachers. And number 2, we need to do a better job of identifying problems. I have to share with you, like Delegate McConkey said, we go to these graduations and we pick up a brochure, and I think Severna Park last year got $33 million of scholarships. We recognize and appreciate the high-flying students, but we need to look at the low-performing students also. There's a graduation rate that is tossed out, I think it's 87%. So what happened to those 13% of the kids who didn't get their diploma? But more importantly, what about the kids who dropped out on the way to senior year? Are they being counted? Are they being tried to bring back into the system? It's a multifaceted problem. Accountability, elected school board, and on the county council, I have to stop.
You have to
Thank you
stop,
very much.
but I'm going to tell you not to sit down.
Thank you.
Because we're going to start the next question with the senators.
All right.
We'll start with you.
May I
because
go
we
first?
started with you.
Whatever the question is.
This is a question from the audience that raises an issue that, curiously, to my surprise, has not already come up when we were talking priorities and so forth before. Question reads this way. What will you do to set an example of civility and compromise in politics? Will you put your constituents above your politics?
Whoever wrote that question, thank you. Of all the things I hope I'm known for, it's to be civil to everyone I come in contact with. The problem we have is you can't dictate it. You can't give me a glass of water, I drink it. You can't put me in a classroom and give me a 3-hour course. You and I know people who are civil to each other, who are respectful. These are the people we want in office. And that doesn't happen on a stage like this. This happens in our everyday activity. Call your legislator. Do they respond? Do they call you back? Do they give you reasonable answers? Do they give you time? I hope over my past 2 terms as your state senator, I've done that for the issues that you've brought to me. I can share with you that I think Eve will nod her head yes, that I've treated her with a great deal of respect. as I have to all my opponents, because this dialogue, this exercise is important for you to get to know us, not for one party to beat down on another. And I have to tell you, I am so disappointed in our federal legislators, both sides of the aisle. Absolutely embarrassing. People ask me, don't you want to become a congressman? And my answer is, hell no. Please, it is so disheartening to see how badly they treat each other. There's plenty of opportunity that we have in our daily lives, in our legislative and political lives, and I'm glad for the question, and I hope to be someone that you would consider reasonable, civil, and approachable. Thank you very much.
So as the only female aviator in a squadron, I was surrounded by Republican men, and here I am, a very progressive woman. And every day it was an exercise in respect and civility, not just because of our difference of opinions, but because there is a culture of sexual harassment in the military. And it's real. So it's not only dealing with that culture, but also looking at people day after day on the boat that you can't get away from that have been, anyway, that's another topic. Point is that I can get along with anybody and well, and I look forward to the General Assembly and working with all those people and working across the aisle. How we actually bring civility about is two ways, from the top down, from the top, and the bottom. Bottom with the children. So we need to take our kids and kind of actually teach them how to get along with people. Because think about it, they're in school, they're head down, then they come home, they're on devices, they're eating dinner, they go to bed. They never actually learn how to actually get along with other people. We need to have real social lessons in our schools. That needs to happen. And then from the top down, we need to hold our legislators, both at a state and a federal level, accountable. And on a state level, the way I want to do that is by using technology to bring people into their governance. I don't know if any of you have ever tried to actually testify in Annapolis when they've been kind of putting bills forward. It's really difficult. You got to show up there and you'll wait 3 to 8 hours to testify on a bill. Who can do that? We're somewhat close to Annapolis, we can do that, but across the state you can't do that. Most people can't just leave their jobs for a day and wait to testify, but we have these mobile devices that have Skype and FaceTime and all kinds of things that can let people see what's going on in the General Assembly and testify and be involved and feel more involved and feel like they know what's going on. That transparency will bring civility because it'll bring about conversation. So those two ways, the children and our leaders. Thank you.
Okay, as we work down the candidates for the House, Pam Luby, you would go first in this rotation.
One of the things about running for office is you have to maintain this robust Facebook page, which is kind of a daunting experience. And when I get an article published about me, I throw it on there. I try to get likes and all that. And I recently did why I'm running in the Annapolis Capitol, and I put it on my Facebook page. And I was surprised to see how many people felt the need to tell me that I was a dumb Democrat and why am I wasting my time and why I should be running. And the worst part of it is that my children see it. They follow my Facebook page and they're like, what's wrong with the adults? And unfortunately, I think it's just coming from the top down. I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. But I will say that my counterparts here, who I've called out on many things on their voting record, we have always had very civil conversations, and we've always treated each other with respect. And I don't see it at this table, and I hope if I do get elected, I don't plan on seeing it in the General Assembly. Thank you.
Michael Malone.
And thank you, Pam, for acknowledging that. Pam and I actually went to law school together a few years ago. And for 24 years, or just under 24 years, I was married to a Democrat. And the reason, I have to say this, the reason was it hasn't been for more than 24 years is my wife did change party. So she could vote for me in the primary because we faced a bit of a tough primary. But so for 24 years, the dinner table discussions were often trying to be intellectually honest and trying to discuss all sides to figure out what is the best policy. My wife and I didn't always necessarily agree, but I would certainly listen to her, and hopefully she's going to keep me around for at least another 24 years. I also heard a discussion just yesterday by Senator Astle, who is retiring and who is a Democrat. He was speaking before about 80 students from Indian Creek about how the legislative process works. And one thing Senator Astle pointed out is he's always maintained that he is John, not necessarily Senator. And I hope all of you, as long as I'm in office and thereafter, will please refer to me as Michael and not necessarily as delegate, because we're here as individuals. We're trying to get the best things done. And we may not always accomplish that, but that's what we're trying to do. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to get back to the days when, Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill would sit down and find a way to get things accomplished.
I think you'd be surprised how civil things are in Annapolis. Many times when you see what's happening in Annapolis, you see the clips on the TV, which is when we're fighting over some controversial issue, but that's a very small number through the session. We deal with about 3,000 bills this last session, and there might be 4 or 5 that are really gets everybody's dander up, and but the rest of the time we have to work together. And like the senator said, we're part of the minority party. We're outnumbered, and if I want to get anything passed through the legislature, I have to get 70 other delegates to approve, and there's only 50 Republicans, so I have to get at least 20 Democrats to also agree. And so we spend a lot of our time building coalitions, talking to the other side, and we work pretty well together, generally. And I've made a lot of good friendships, and I think that across the aisle, I think you'd be surprised by some of the people that I consider close friends in the legislature. And I think that unlike Washington, D.C., where they spend very little time together and they're more commuting back and forth, we really get to know our colleagues and work well together.
You stole my line. That's okay. Well, I think there are a lot more civility in Annapolis than many people see. And as my colleague says here, that we're 50, they're 91. 91 always beats 50 no matter what. But we still pass bills that are good and they're common sense bills. And although we sometimes agree on things or we always agree to disagree on a lot of things, but when we have the dialogue and they accept our amendments because we show them our side of the fence. But I think the reason we are seeing all this incivility in society has a lot to do with violence on TV, video games, internet, all that. And I think it's trickling down to how people react. And I think I don't even watch TV anymore or the news because it just almost feels like they're egging everybody on to just say something. But there's a lot more that unite us that divide us, and I will continue with that. And I have a great time in Annapolis. I learn a lot from my colleagues on both sides, and this is the way we work in Annapolis. Thank you.
Heather and Tracy, please.
And the mark of a really great director is someone who has a big picture, a unifying vision, but is not so close-minded that they don't recognize the input of others, that they might have better ideas than yours that still support that vision. I've spent 20 years working in arts education and arts administration, working for nonprofits. And if you know anything about the arts, we do tend to represent a diverse group of people, a diverse group of ideas, and you have to tread lightly because you don't want to quell innovation. You don't want to quell the energy, the enthusiasm. You want to keep everyone excited about the end goal and keep everyone on task. And that's what I've spent my entire career doing. In fact, ironically, I could teach a 3-hour class in empathy and compassion and kindness because that's what I've done. That's what Cultivating Kindness Through Theater Arts was all about. But the way that I start is I start an argument, a debate, a discussion from a place where we can probably find coalition. And then we go from there. You start with that one kernel that you have in common, and you build from there. So I've spent an entire career working from civility and compassion and compromise. I've been a proponent of kindness as a superpower. And in fact, I started to write an op-ed just questioning, is there a place for kindness and compassion in politics? And I didn't finish it because I was told that might make me weak as a candidate. So I'm thrilled by this question because I believe compassion is an absolute essential tool for political discussion.
Tracy, please.
From my days in the compliance and ethics field, one of the most important things we talked about in training was tone from the top. So basically, we were working with large multinational corporations, and the head of the organization, if he was respectful of people, of proper behavior, of compliant behavior, that would transfer through the whole organization. So in all the trainings we did, there was a lot of emphasis on the tone from the top to set the tone for the organization. I think as elected officials, that's very important. We're setting the stage for our constituents. We're setting the stage for our children. So tone from the top is important, and I think that all elected officials need to be respectful of other ideas, other people. We all disagree on a lot of issues, but we all want the same basic thing. We are all trying to get to the same end goal, which is a better community. So I've always found when you bring diverse people together with all kinds of ideas, all kinds of from different walks of life, bring them together, sit down and talk, respect their opinions, and then that is the only way that we can really come up with sustainable solutions. Because if the other party hasn't bought into it or hasn't, at least gotten a piece of what they need to feel whole, the solution won't be sustainable. So as an elected official, I think we need to hold all elected officials to the highest level of standards, ethical and civil standards.
Okay, I have so many good questions here, and I'm going to ask two at once here on the same topic to try to get you to engage with the thoughts that are represented in these questions. During the next legislative session and beyond, how will you work to change and or strengthen our laws to reduce gun violence? Second question on the topic, would you support a bill expanding background checks for all long guns, including private sales, which is a current weakness? I guess in this complex procedure, we're starting with you, Michael Malone.
This past session, we had three significant gun bills come forth. One was the commonly referred to as the bump stock bill, which I voted for, which was significant to me because one of the individuals who was shot was a Arundel grad, and I'm a 1985 Arundel grad. And
one who was shot where?
In Las Vegas.
That's what I thought.
The other bill was, and I think I've discussed this issue with the young lady in the second row here, is removing guns from those who've been convicted of domestic violence and making sure that it's been, the individuals who've been convicted of domestic violence no longer have those firearms, and I voted also for that bill. The bill I did not vote for was the what's commonly referred to as the red flag. And candidly, the reason I did not vote for it is because I felt it was rushed. It came forth within 3 hours of what's called sine die, which is the end of the legislative session.
Explain the red flag.
The red flag bill basically provided that a wide variety of people could bring forth a petition in the courts asking for guns to be removed from somebody who they believed could be harmful. My concern with it is, for one, give you an example of a flaw in the bill, and I thought the bill needed to be improved, was it basically said if you were in a romantic relationship with someone, you could bring forth the petition. Well, one of the jokes I almost wanted to say, back in high school, there was a couple girls who I thought I might have been in a romantic relationship, but they didn't think that there was any romantic relationship going on. So the point being is that was not well defined, It needed to be improved. The Maryland Bar Association has had a challenge with, part of it is, basically there's a severability clause within it, which basically says if part of this bill was ruled unconstitutional, then the other parts survive. That is unique and doesn't really exist in any other bills. And so we're trying to experiment, and quite frankly, dealing with gun violence is not something we should be experimenting with. We need to get it right.
Tony McConkey, please.
You know, generally, I support everyone's right to defend themselves and to own a firearm legally. And we have very stringent laws to make sure that you cannot buy a firearm unless you are not a criminal and that you pass all the checks that we require. I did vote initially for the red flag bill, and I thought that, you know, it's very important that we have a mechanism for removing guns from people who might become unstable, who have mental issues or mental problems, and initially I voted for the red flag bill thinking that we could tighten it, we could make it so that it was a better bill and would apply more narrowly. But just like Delegate Malone said, you know, in the end, it was overbroad. It provided too many questions, too many loopholes, and I voted against it.
Do you assume that it will be brought up again?
I think that we'll be working on that for many years to come. I think we'll be tweaking it, we'll be adding to it, we'll be changing it.
Sid Sapp.
Thank you. You know, I think there's violence in general, whether it just exists in our society, whether it's gun violence, hammer violence, whatever you call it, the people that have mental issues, they're going to find a way to do harm. And that's why I'm a big advocate of mental health. And that's why I didn't support the red flag bill, because it did not address the main issue that we all agreed on initially, that it needs to have a mental health aspect in it, and it didn't. And they brought the bill to us on sine die 2 hours before we adjourned with 39 amendments, and they expected us to vote on it. We stood up and we asked questions, and we were shut out. So I think that we need to address a lot of things. A lot of it goes back to mental health, which I'm a big advocate of. As far as the background checks, we do have background checks. When you buy a shotgun from a business, you have to go through a form which is called 4473. You can look it up and see. Now, for private sales, I think no one that has any mental issue should have, so I wouldn't have any problem that anyone is selling a gun privately should have to do it just like anybody else.
Background checks for private
For
sales?
private, yes.
Yes, okay. Why don't we do something a little different here? Eve, let's go to the two Senate candidates and then come right down the row, okay?
So, boy, talk about a topic which is personal and it brings up strong emotions. I voted for all three of those bills, which Delegate Malone mentioned. And the reason I voted for the red flag bill, in spite of its problems, is that the taking of guns is temporary. If you threaten someone else and the police come and take your guns, 7 days, 30 days, 3 months, and 6 months, you can come back to the court and apply for your guns. Maybe it was a heated argument and you needed a few days to cool off. Maybe it was serious and the judge can determine we're going to keep the guns for a while. But there's a court review, and I think that's the key on that one. I also voted for the domestic abuse, taking away the guns of that person, and I voted to ban the bump stock. Because of that, there's a group out there that have endorsed both my opponent and myself. Women demand action against gun violence. Is that the right term? All right, she'll correct it for me. We're both endorsed by that group who recognize Second Amendment rights but reasonable restrictions, and I'm on board with that. As far as background checks, it is a tragedy in this nation that only 20 states have background checks. 20 states. So if you go to one of those other states and buy a gun, drive back to Maryland and we have a problem. There has to be a national effort to get background checks on private sales, gun shows, the whole ball of wax. We have to treat mental illness appropriately, but we have to take care of it seriously. Thank you.
Okay, Eve?
So yes, I am a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate. My opponent also has an A rating from the NRA. I was a Navy sharpshooter, and I had a sidearm on my missions. But I could not hold that sidearm until I was trained and I had exhibited proficiency in that weapon. So why are we not applying the same thing to people who are trying to own and use deadly weapons? Cars you need to be trained on. Can be killing items too. So we need to talk about actual training and making sure that people who have these deadly weapons know what they're doing with them, and safe storage. We need to educate on safe storage as well. We need to close the gun show loopholes, and yes, I absolutely support expanding background checks. We need to close the gun show loopholes. And I do believe that mental health is an issue, but people who have mental health issues have a lot more guns to choose from because of the proliferation since the NRA they basically became a marketing arm for the gun manufacturers. So we need to actually remind the NRA what they used to be. And I don't know if there's any NRA members in here, but for 200 years, the NRA was a safety and community organization. After Lincoln was assassinated, they worked with law enforcement to ban those guns. After Kennedy was assassinated, they worked with law enforcement to ban guns. They actually were looking out for our safety until the 70s, when a small group in the NRA basically staged a coup and turned everything over to the gun manufacturers. So I want Marylanders, especially Maryland NRA members, to start speaking up and saying, we don't want this NRA. We want the NRA that actually used to look out for the citizens and the public safety and be about training and safety and events and community. Thank you.
Heather? Yeah, thank you.
I just want to clarify one thing, because I am a gun sense candidate as well, but Moms Demand Action does not endorse candidates. And I know we have some representatives from Moms Demand Action. They give you a designation as a gun sense candidate, and I am one as well. I talked about changing the narrative before, and I'm concerned because so often mental illness becomes synonymous with gun violence, and it's not. It's a parallel issue. It needs to be addressed, but it needs to be addressed as a parallel issue and as a preventative issue. Mental health, not mental illness. I was a big proponent of the red flag bill because it puts a pause button for people who are in a moment of crisis, because crisis can be a moment, crisis can be a lifetime, crisis can be chronic, but what causes that gun violence is access to that gun. And what we want to do is limit the access in those moments of crisis. I also want to incentivize safe storage programs so that we're working with responsible gun owners instead of constantly being at odds. I do want to reduce the loopholes, and I absolutely support background checks for long guns. That is a strange loophole, especially when you consider that so often the really high-profile mass shootings that we hear about are long guns and semi-automatic and weapons. So they're not handgun violence, and our strong laws in Maryland are handgun laws. I also think it's really important that we consider that we designate this as a health crisis so we can expand education in the schools and so we can address the level of suicide by preventing access, because gun violence, when we talk about gun violence, so often mass shootings sort of take the narrative, but 2/3 of gun violence are suicide.
I absolutely support universal background checks for all guns. I don't know a lot about guns, so long guns, short guns, whatever guns. I think that everyone should have to go through the universal background check system. We need to close the loopholes that we see at gun shows and other places. I think it's really important that we not allow the NRA, and our 3 incumbents are endorsed by the NRA, but I think it's important we not allow them to control the conversation. We need to stop letting conversation be stifled by saying it's a Second Amendment violation, or we will never move forward, we will never find solutions. And frankly, we've got to find them. We've seen the violence here in Annapolis. we need to look at ways that, and I do agree that we should also strengthen the red flag bill so that more people can petition, because they're petitioning a judge to take away weapons from someone that could harm themselves or others. We need to make sure that our laws are enforced. We do have a lot of laws on the books, but we see that sometimes they're not enforced for a huge variety of reasons. And often it's substance abuse or mental health is used as a reason. But I think better indicators are increasing aggression, disrespect for the rule of law, and disrespect for authority. There are a lot of people with mental health issues who've never picked up a gun or touched a gun. And I think we need to be very careful that we're not using that as an excuse for not moving forward. So I do support continued aggressive conversation on this, and we need to find solutions. And I also have an article in the Capitol with some ideas, and I put copies out in the back room if you want to pick it up.
Pam Luby, please.
Thank you, Tracy. I feel a lot better now because I was sitting here thinking, what's a long gun? I don't know what a long gun is. But it's a gun, so I support a background check on that. I think one of the things that we need to do is we have very hard-working law enforcement officers that are out there making arrests for assaults, second-degree assaults, and they come to court, and a lot of those crimes in which a gun would be taken away, they get put on a stet docket, they're null prost, a second-degree assault goes down to a first-degree assault, a first-degree assault goes down to a second-degree assault, and all of a sudden that person has their guns back. So I think working with our judiciary and working with our state's attorney's office to close those loopholes and have those mandatory sentences would go a long way. And I think I read a statistic recently where of all of the arrests for people who had guns that were not supposed to have guns, only less than 6% ever went to a guilty plea. So we have a lot of loopholes to close, and I would advocate for those. Thank you.
Okay. I am alert to the time and to the need to save some time for closing statements. But we did start a little bit late, so I want to ask one more question. There are so many good ones here that deal with everything from a ban on plastic bags and styrofoam to strengthening the state's Forest Conservation Act to making it as easy and convenient as possible for people to register to vote and actually vote. These are important issues, and there are too many of them to get to. About the Maryland Citizens Health Initiative. And so I can only suggest that you talk about some of these things with the candidates when it's over. Here's one that there are several that refer to this, so let's conclude with this. And I've frankly forgotten where we are in this massive, I guess we start with Tony, yeah, right. So here's the question. What can the state do to address climate change? What can be done on the state level to reduce carbon emissions?
The state has entered into and has passed several laws, by 2020, by 2035, by 2050, we're going to reduce carbon emissions in the state of Maryland. But, honestly, there's very little our little state can do to affect the global climate. I personally am not convinced that humans have a direct effect on the change. I think it is changing, but I'm not sure that our impact is that great. But even if you accept the fact that we're having an impact, Maryland by itself can do very little. But we've done what we can. We've passed a renewable energy standard, require more renewable energy power from electric power from renewable energy sources, and we've passed greenhouse greenhouse gas initiative to require, a greater participation by the state in regional programs. And so I think we're doing what we can, but I'm not sure that, as the state of Maryland, there's much we can do. I think it has to be more of a national approach if there's going to be one. Thank you.
I think we're going this way to Sid Saab. Do you need the question again? What can the state do to address climate change?
I think the state can do very little as well. I don't think, I just have to echo what my colleagues here said. I think we have supported common sense legislation that would help, but I also think anytime that we support certain things that would actually increase the cost on businesses and citizens, we have to be very aware of. So I don't think the state has a lot to do with it.
All right, let's break it up again. Eve, let's go to the Senate candidates and then come right down the table to Michael, I guess.
So I'm proudly endorsed by League Conservation Voters, Trash Free Maryland, and Sierra Club. And my opponent will tell you that he got a 100% rating from the League of Conservation Voters. That was because of this past session. But before that, he has a lifetime score of 39% because of the way he was voting before 2018. But I'm glad that it changed in 2018, so thank you. So 3 initiatives. The first is I want to ban EPS foam. It's commonly called styrofoam, but technically it's not. And it's not actually recyclable. You see that recycling symbol on the bottom of your takeout containers, but it's not really. What happens is it breaks up into tiny little globes that absorb the toxins from the air, from the water. They get in the things that we eat, the air we breathe, water that we drink. So we have to ban EPS foam. And there already are lots of restaurants in the district that are using compostable takeout containers. So it is very doable, and we need to actually encourage that and incentivize that.
The question was whether you would sponsor and support a bill to that effect.
Absolutely, yes, to ban EPS foam, for sure. I would also introduce business recycling programs, because there are plenty of businesses where you walk into it, you have recyclable trash, you can't put it in recycling because all they have is trash. I talked to businesses across the district that would absolutely be happy to participate in a program like that if it existed. So I would pass legislation to implement a program like that too. Thank you.
Great question. Yes, I did get a 100% vote from the League of Conservation Voters this session, and there's a couple reasons for that. I've become a strong supporter of wind, clean, renewable wind power. As a matter of fact, there was a bill presented this year in the General Assembly that would have killed the wind farm off of Ocean City. By moving it out another 10, 12 miles, it would have been financially impossible for the developer to make it come to completion. And I voted against that. Wind farms 12, 17 miles off the beach are just fine. When the federal government withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord, is that the right term for it? Yeah, Paris Accord. It was brought to all of our attention that Maryland has requirements for our environment more stringent than the Paris Accord, and we haven't changed any of ours. So on a federal level, on a national, international level, Maryland is positioned well to address issues of renewable portfolios and solar panels and wind power. As was brought up, we have a goal of making 25% of our power renewable resources by the year 2025. Now, we can't go 100% because the wind stops, the sun goes down, and they don't allow water, hydro plants to be counted in the renewable portfolio, which is a problem. And I'm also a very strong supporter of community solar parks, where people who don't have a lot of open land can gather together and contract to put a solar park in their community or even in their region to help generate solar power into the grid. And also, I was the only Republican that voted to ban styrofoam. My peers didn't appreciate it, but think about it. It's stupid to put these things out. They don't go anywhere. In 3,000 years, somebody's going to dig into our landfill and go, what is this? Well, that's not a good legacy to leave our families. Thank you very much.
100 years ago, Henry Ford increased his productivity by writing in chalk a number. And it was the number that the team the night before had reached. And every day as the team switched over, he'd erase that number and he'd write a new number. And the team that came in, they wanted to beat it. The reason I tell this story is because we need to incentivize renewable energy innovation. It's how we get people on board so that we're not constantly fighting this narrative that says we have to be either pro-environment or pro-business. We can incentivize better business practices that support our environmental concerns. And we need retraining programs so that we're supporting not just our environmental concerns, but our workforce as well for industries that are dying. I'm also a huge proponent of public transportation because public transportation meets a number of needs. It's an accessibility issue. It's an environmental issue. It is it's an overcrowding issue. It gets cars off the roads. I also want to expand the reforestation catchment area because right now we are supposed to be doing a 1-to-1 planting of trees, and right now we're at a 1 in 10. But part of the reason is because we're limited in the area that we can actually replant to meet that reforestation need. And I'm a big advocate of the Green Streets program, which passed this year. I want to actually expand it because it creates green spaces every time we have a public works extension of our state highways.
As I mentioned earlier, this is a very important issue to me. I do believe the state can address climate change and must address climate change. Ed mentioned the 25% portfolio by 2025. I don't believe that's good enough. I think we need to up that. I think we need to get to 50%. We need to set a goal to strive toward that goal. With wind, solar, and geothermal, as I mentioned, it doesn't have to cost more to business. I found as a homeowner, we are not using wind, but with solar and geothermal, we are actually saving money. So it does work. I think it's critical that we do this. We can't keep on the track we're on. I'm concerned that a transportation solution is 100 more miles of roadways to connect Baltimore and Washington and areas. We need other alternatives. We need trains. We need public transportation, or we are never going to meet the 25% goal. I do believe that if each of the 50 states do their part, that we can meet the goals that we had set for ourselves. And the energy issue is the Green Energy Jobs Act, all of this. This will be a key area that I'll spend time in if elected.
So I do believe in climate change, and the reason why I do is I lost my house in Hurricane Isabel. I was in a 100-year flood zone. I do believe that climate change is man-made. I would have voted for the Clean Energy Jobs Act of 2016, and I would have voted for the Clean Energy Jobs Act of 2018, which did not pass. And I think even if you don't believe in climate change, which I think the evidence is pretty indisputable, what you can't dispute is that clean energy initiatives bring about jobs and strengthen our economy. So it's a win-win, and if elected, I would push for that.
If I return to the House in January, I will be supportive of legislation that provides carrots rather than sticks to reduce the use of carbon energy. I'm a big fan of tax credits, which will promote renewable energy, and I think we need to see more of that.
Will that be a carbon tax or a cap and trade, or what do you?
Well, I don't want to step on what's occurring on the federal level. I'm speaking more of, with regards to, let's say, solar energy, providing incentives for homeowners and for corporations to promote solar energy and to keep that going. The same with regards to geothermal. And candidly, I also think we need to have a more intellectually honest discussion about nuclear energy and what is the overall effect on
Okay,
both
thank you.
the local and national effect as far as how things go. So I hope I have a chance to return in November, and thank you once again for coming out tonight.
You've already spoken on this? Forgive me, I lost track there. Okay, so we're going to go to the closing statements. As I say, there are a lot of good topics here, and you can have some discussion afterwards. So we had a formula where, Ed Riley, you've won the prize on the Senate side for the first closing statement, and obviously be followed by Eve, and then I think Sam.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, you've got a problem. Look at this panel. Educated, experienced, motivated. This is going to be tough for you. You got to figure out who will best represent your values. Now, as Delegate McConkey said, we vote on about 3,000 bills a year. In the past 4 years, that's 12,000 bills. And I can't, in 2 minutes, give you the summary. But I can tell you there's organizations in the state who examine every single vote to see how we match up to their values. In this election cycle, I've been endorsed by the Maryland Association of Realtors. I've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police. There's 2 business groups in the state who do ratings, Maryland Businesses for Responsible Government and National NIFB, whatever that is, Small Business Advocates. In addition, I've got the certification for Moms Demand Action Against Gun Violence. And these are folks who, in a sense, look out for your interest. They look out for their interest. I'm a 2-term state senator. I have hopefully represented you well. I've been available, not afraid to wade in on issues. About 7 months ago, we had a meeting around the corner. The wise women wanted to hold us accountable for what we did in the General Assembly. And I didn't shy away from that. It's important for you voters to know what we stand for. I am asking for your vote. If you can't tell, I love this stuff. I really do. I work hard at it. And I would like to continue to represent you and look forward to your questions. Thank you, Terrence, for your work. Thank the League of Women Voters and the American Association of University Women for organizing this event. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming tonight, and I know that I will be sticking around, so please feel free to come up to me with questions. So I want to tell you about my endorsements as well to give you an idea. You already heard about my environmental and my Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate. I've also been endorsed by the teachers associations, both MSEA and TAC, Labor, AFL-CIO, and AFSCME, NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland, Progressive Maryland, and I'm a Represent Maryland small money candidate. And I kind of want that to parlay into my next thing. One of the reasons I'm running is because our communities and our legislators are so focused on money over people. We need to actually be taking care of people. And I want to look and see what our money is doing or not doing for people. In my job, I own a financial business, a financial consulting business. And I help small businesses figure out what's going on with their money. Profit and loss statements, income statements, balance sheets, stuff I get excited about. Most people don't. I like it. But I look forward to digging into the General Assembly and seeing what Maryland is doing with our money. Because I have a strong feeling that it's not what most of us want to be happening. We need to be taking care of our people, our communities, and I want to connect people across party lines, across all kinds of backgrounds. And I think that the best way to do that is starting conversations and building relationships. We shouldn't be knocking on doors just on election years. We should have field teams all the time. And when I'm elected, I intend on having an outreach team that is always bringing people in. I want to make sure people know when votes are coming up. I want to hear from the district about how they want me to vote on different things and really bring people into their own governance. And like I said before, bring technology into that and let them see what's going on in the General Assembly and testify if they want. I'm Eve Hurwitz, eve33.com. combat veteran, two-tour combat veteran, naval flight officer, mother of 5, business owner, community organizer. I organized the women's marches in 2017 and 2018 and a lot of the other rallies and marches you've seen. I really enjoy bringing people together, and I hope that I have your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think we're coming all the way down to Sid Saab, who has not been able to go first in this weird rotation, and then we'll just finish up.
Thank you. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out here tonight. I know you probably have better things to do than just come out, but we appreciate you taking the time to come out and learn about us. You know, I grew up overseas, and I chose to come to this great country. I think it's the best country in the entire world. I also chose to come here and make Maryland home for me and my children. My wife is a native Marylander, and I love our state, I love our country, and I want the best for our children and your children and grandchildren. You know, we might not all agree on every single issue that is out there, but I think there's a lot more that unite us than that divide us. You know, I have worked very hard, and I always strive to find common grounds that we can work to produce workable solutions. For instance, I know I didn't discuss this earlier, but I do support tree conservation, solar farms, and credit for energy. Those are things that I think both sides of the aisle need to work together when it comes to all the issues. I am a multifaceted candidate. I am a small business owner. I proudly own 2 businesses here in the district. I create jobs. I know how hard it is to create jobs. I feel the pain that business owners go through, but I also feel the pain that citizens go through with skyrocketing healthcare, drugs, all that stuff. I care a lot immensely about our mental health crisis that we have. I don't think, you know, people are talking enough about mental health. We mentioned it here, but I think people at home should talk about this. The violence on TV, on the internet, all that stuff. I think I have proven myself to be effective. I've proven myself to be someone that works in a bipartisan fashion. My passion, when I first got elected school board was one of my top priorities. I worked hard every single year until we put a bill that we have elected school board. I've worked against elder abuse. I've worked in health and government operations, which you're right, it doesn't always go, but we do deal with health, all health aspects, facilities and occupation and health and insurance and drug prices and pharmacies. But we also deal with wills and trusts, and we also deal with government operations, which is procurement and state contracts. So it's a huge, you know, the first year we always felt like we're drinking from a hose, but the last 4 years I've learned so much. There's much more to learn, and you know, our job as your delegate, not just to be a policymaker, our job is to be your voice, and we are the link between you and government. And I promised you 4 years ago, if I was given the chance to be your delegate, I'll give it everything I can, and I will renew my vows and renew my promise to you again, that I will do everything I can, and my door is always open, regardless who you are. Thank you.
It's a great honor to represent you. And I don't want you to hold it against me that I seem to be the only person who can't operate the microphone. I apologize. I'm very proud of the last 4 years. And, you know, I was first elected in 2002, and I felt like I wasn't making much progress. We were arguing for, on the budget, we were arguing for smaller government. We were arguing for less taxes, and that didn't seem to be in vogue. When I was first elected, we had a booming economy, and revenues were going up, and there was no reason to try to rein in spending. And then later on, we had a recession, a big recession, the Great Recession, and we got way behind, and we were raising taxes. It seemed like every month we were raising a new tax. We raised 40 new taxes I didn't vote for them, but we raised between 2006 and 2014, we raised 40 new taxes. And it wasn't sustainable. We'd raise the tax, and then we'd spend twice as much, and then we'd have to raise another tax. But the last 4 years, I'm very proud of. Working on the budget with our governor, Governor Hogan, he has proven once and for all that if we simply control spending for a couple years, what a tremendous benefit we'll have. We just found out a week ago, the comptroller announced we're going to have a $1.3 billion surplus this next year. $1.3 billion surplus. And that's because for 4 years, we limited growth to 1.5%. For 4 years, we didn't raise new taxes. And the economy has grown, businesses have grown, the number of businesses have expanded. And we have proven that that works and that we can raise additional funds by simply letting the economy grow instead of tax, tax, tax. So I ask your vote so that we can continue that policy. We've proven that it votes, so we continue that policy for the next 4 years. I think we're heading in the right direction. Please keep us on track. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you for coming out tonight. I grew up here in Anne Arundel County. I work here in Anne Arundel County within District 33, and my wife and I have raised 2 of our children who are out of the nest and self-supportive, and we have 2 more children who we're raising here in Anne Arundel County. So I'm passionate about making this a better place to live. I've been passionate a long time about making Maryland a 2-party state. And part of that was our opening question tonight. How do we end the political gerrymandering? When I go in and I try a case in the courtroom, I always like to have some independent documentation to back up what I'm saying. So I please ask everyone, pick up this that's out on the table and see what efforts I've made to end the gerrymandering here in Anne Arundel County. And it's not just Republicans versus Democrats. When I signed on to the amicus brief, it was Republicans who were gerrymandering the districts in Wisconsin. I was the only elected official who signed on to an amicus brief to do that. You will see that I've written to the Capitol numerous times in articles. I've written articles within the Severna Park Voice. And there's been articles that have been placed that addressed how it was a bipartisan effort for my bill for HB 1022, myself and Delegate Josephine Pena-Menlich. Sorry, Josephine's going to give me a hard time about that. So please look at this packet and see that the fact that when I address an issue and I get into it, I'm going to work hard because I want to make Anne Arundel County and the state of Maryland a better place. Once again, thank you for coming out and have a good evening.
So I'm not running to launch a political career. People often say to me, well, what's your end game? And I say, well, what do you mean, what's my end game? I want to be a delegate. Well, why do you want to be a delegate and nothing else? And I want to be a delegate because I want to solve problems, not build a political career. And I'm actually very good at problem solving. I've done this in our courts, I've done this in our nonprofits, I've done this for Fortune 500 companies, and I've done this for several community organizations. And the formula for my success is the first thing I do is I get stakeholders involved, then I consult the experts, and then I work towards a solution. And that has been a winning formula, and that is what I will take to the General Assembly if elected, and I hope I have your vote. Thank you.
When Ed started, he mentioned that each of you need to vote for the person that represents your values. That's why I'm in the race, because I took a very detailed look at the voting records of the 3 incumbents, and they don't represent my values. And I suggest you take care. There's been definitely some campaign rhetoric about what people say they support and how they've voted in the past 2 sessions. So basically, it's important to me that we have quality health care for everyone, particularly for women, and women need to have access to a full range of reproductive health care services so that they can make their own personal decisions about their future, their career, their education. And so both women and men, women and their partners or men, can plan and become parents when they choose. I'm not going to list out endorsements. I do have environmental, teacher, labor, but one I received yesterday or Tuesday was from Emily's list, and I do want to point that out. I'm very proud of that one. So what I'm asking you to do is vote according to your values. If like me, you treasure the natural environment, I'm your candidate. If you believe that we all deserve affordable health care and prescriptions, I'm your candidate. If you believe that we need to strengthen our public schools, by the way, my kids and I all went to Anne Arundel County Public Schools. My youngest graduated 10 years ago, got an excellent education. All 3 of my kids were able to go on to graduate school and are working in their fields. I'm very concerned about the slide in the Anne Arundel County school system, because It wasn't this way when I went or 10 years ago. So if you agree that ethical behavior is paramount, I'm your candidate. And if you believe that taking no action on gun violence is not an option, then I'm your candidate. Thank you for coming.
All right, Heather Bagnall, you get to bat cleanup. It's a great honor.
Someone has to be the last. As I said, I'm a storyteller, and I think it's pretty clear that this is an incredibly qualified panel of candidates. So I'm just going to tell a story that gives you an idea of my values. I spent a year working with Disney Cruise Line in their entertainment department, and I was on all of the committees. I was on the food committee, I was on the activities committee, and I was on concerns committee. And the restaurant staff came to me because they didn't have an advocate. And there was a problem. Their restrooms weren't working. On one entire side of the ship, all of the staff restrooms weren't working. And they came to me, and I took that to committee. And when I brought it up, the response was, well, maybe they need to go to their rooms. Because what was happening is they'd go to one restroom and it would be broken. They'd go to a second restroom, it would be broken. And then their 10-minute break was over, and then it was 4 hours before they had a chance to get to the restroom. And they said, well, maybe they need to just go straight to their guest rooms and use those, because then there is no risk of GI. And I took that on board, and I realized that these were people who just didn't understand the plight of these staff members. So I said, what you're telling me is that we are a multi-million-dollar company, and we can't give the same minimum standards that our entire incarcerated community has. And there was silence. And then there were new bathrooms. That's how I operate. That's the kind of comprehensive problem solver that I am. I'm not looking to build a political career. I'm looking to take people's stories into the General Assembly. So I am a storyteller, and I'm asking you for your vote. If you want your stories brought before the entire General Assembly, then I am your candidate. And I hope that you'll vote for me November 6th.
I want to thank all of you for not only participating, but also for the questions that you submitted and those that I'm afraid were not answered because I couldn't get them all in the amount of time. And to thank the panel, which I think we did get a good view of their views, and that's what it's all about. So give them a hand. And I'll let Kathy Larrabee, the Vice President of the League of Women Voters, Anne Arundel County, to take us out of here.
And we want to thank our excellent moderator for 2 hours of hard work. An engaging evening, a very engaging evening, and thank you. Thank you to Mark Goldberg, our videographer, and our League and AAUW volunteers. Check out our website on Saturday. Direct your friends, neighbors, family. Thank you.
Thank you all.